There's some alarming trends occurring right now in the Florida single-family housing market. So for example, there's more houses for sale this March than any other month in the past 4.5 years. That's right. Inventory levels in Florida is very close to a 5-year high. On top of that, there's more than twice as many houses for sale this March compared to March of 2022. Additionally, the share of price reductions in Florida is at least a 5-year high for this time of year as well. Some very big changes occurring in Florida, and let's discuss. And by the way, a lot of research goes into making videos just like this one. So if you guys get any value out of this video whatsoever, then please hit the like button. Also consider subscribing as well. I post frequent housing market updates for Florida, Texas, California, and on a national level as well. So thank you so much for joining me in today's video, and let's begin. This is a new report from the Florida Realtors Association just announced in mid-April this year. So closed home sales, this is a number of sales transactions which closed during the month. That fell by 10.4% compared to March of 2023. This, by the way, is the biggest year-over-year decrease since April of 2023. I also did some digging for you guys because this report only covers through January of 2020. So I really like to look at is how they do these numbers, all these stats I'm going to share in today's video. How does that compare to years past going back to the year of 2016? So in regards to closed home sales, as I note right there, at 23,435 this April, that's lower than the average March from 2016 through 2019, when we should have around 25,000 sales. Now we have just over 23,000. So big picture here, we have a decrease by 10% on a year-over-year basis, but also much lower compared to pre-COVID levels as well. In regards to cash sales, there was just under 7,000 cash sales this March. This is a decrease of 10% compared to just 12 months ago. Now, having said that, at 6,981 cash sales, this is the highest levels we've had going back to June 2023, which if I had to guess, I would imagine we're seeing more cash sales compared to people buying houses using loans because, mortgage rates have increased big time over the past 12 months. And on top of that, we should see potentially more decreases ahead because average daily rates have been at or above 7% ever since April 1st this year. In regards to cash sales, approximately 29.8% of all sales this March came from a cash buyer. So about a third of all sales coming from a cash buyer, roughly on par with last year's levels as well. In fact, flat from 12 months ago. Okay, let's change gears slightly here and talk about the median sold price in Florida this March at $420,600. That's up by 3.9% year over year, which is higher compared to 12 months ago, when back then the gain was at 2.1%. Also, I want to share some context regarding these levels here, because this is a big increase compared to March of 2019, obviously pre-COVID levels, at just under 421,000. This is approximately $165,000 more compared to March of 2019. Back then, the median sold price was at $256,000. Now it's at $421,000. That represents a giant increase of 64% ever since March of 2019. So big picture, it's nice to see that home prices are not skyrocketing like they did in 2020 and 2021. But when looking at the levels we have right now compared to pre-pandemic the era, the gains are quite remarkable to say the least. Let's also talk about the median percent of original list price received. That's kind of a tongue twister, so let me briefly explain. So this March, that ratio was at 96.5%. This means that for houses that did sell this March, they sold for 3.5 percentage points less than the seller's original asking price. That is slightly above last year's levels, when at that time, the ratio was at 96.1%. Let's also discuss how fast or how slow houses are selling in Florida. The median days in the market is at 40 days. This is a time frame when you list your house in Florida until you accept an offer from a home buyer. That's an increase of 14.3% year over year, which is pretty astonishing because 1 year ago, we saw a giant increase of 288.9%. This also represents the biggest yearly increase we've had going back to October of 2023 as well. Also, I looked back at their report from March of 2020, which went back to March of 2016, and I found this right here. At 40 days, this is actually 9 days faster compared to March of 2019. So houses on average are selling about 9 days faster compared to pre-COVID levels. However, it's still about 4 times slower compared to March of 2022. As you can see in this graph right here, March 2022, the median days in the market was at 10 days. Now it's at 40 days. All right, let's talk about new pending home sales, new listings, and active listing inventory. Some big changes here. So this is a measure of early signs of home buying demand, right? A measure of contracts being signed between buyers and sellers of existing single-family houses in Florida. That fell by 3% on a year-over-year basis. It's at nearly 27,000 this March. And that's roughly 4,000 less pending home sales compared to March 2019. We have been seeing an increase or a seasonal increase of pending sales over the past several months now. But again, we're still below last year's levels, down by 3%. In regards to the number of properties being listed for sale or new listings, that was at nearly 33,000 this March, which is roughly on par with March of 2019, by the way, but it still is an increase of 7.7% from 12 months ago. So new listings are rising, but not increasing at the same rate we saw in January and February, though. So the year-over-year increases in January was up by nearly 17%. Then in February, an increase or it skyrocketed by 28%. Now it's up by nearly 8%. So big picture, still increasing, but not increasing at the same rates we saw over the past couple of months. Now here's where it gets really spicy though, because here's a measure of active listings or housing supply that increased a whopping 40.5% on a year-over-year basis, on top of the nearly 116% we saw 1 year ago. At around 86,000 single-family houses for sale in Florida, that's the highest levels of any month since October of 2019, so nearly or around a 4.5-year high. It's also more than 2 times more houses for sale this March compared to March of 2022. And here's a look at that right here. In March of 2022, we had just under 30,000 houses for sale. Now we have a whopping 86,000, huge increase over the past 2 years, and on top of that, a 4.5-year high as well. Here's another big change as well, the month supply. This is an estimate of the number of months it would take to sell all the houses for sale at the current sales pace. So assuming no new listings were to hit the market, so new listings stop altogether, it would take 4.1 months to sell all the houses in Florida at the current sales pace. That's a giant increase of nearly 52% on a year-over-year basis, which was on top of the 170% increase we saw in March of 2023. Additionally, I did some digging for you guys as well. At 4.1 months, that's the highest level of any month since April of 2019. It's also about 4 times as high compared to early 2022. Back then, the month supply was around 1 month. That was back in December 2021 through March of 2022. We had a 1 month supply in Florida. Now it's at 4.1 months. So in other words, inventory and the month supply of inventory absolutely skyrocketing over the past couple of years. Now here's something I found to be really interesting as well, because this impacts the median sold price at a statewide level. So it has to do with the mix in sales. So let me briefly explain. These are closed home sales by price range this March. So in the range of 50,000 to nearly 300,000, huge decreases of nearly or over 20%. So for example, in the range of 250 to just under 300,000 for the month of March, that fell by 21.7% compared to March of 2023. So sales of houses in the more affordable range compared to luxury home sales is quite a bit different. So sales for over $1 million this March, that increased by 9.1%. So more sales in the luxury housing market and less sales for more affordable houses. And this impacts the median sold price in Florida. I should say it artificially inflates it because we're seeing a mix of sales, more luxury home sales compared to more affordable houses that are selling. Now, here's something I found to be really interesting as well. Here's the amount of houses for sale by price range and how that compares to 12 months ago. So what I found to be interesting, we're not seeing a giant increase in one particular price range. It's virtually across all price ranges. So inventory increasing overall, but also increasing in virtually all these price segments, except for, of course, less than $100,000. So for example, in the range of 200 to 250,000, an increase of 32.9% compared to 12 months ago. Whereas houses that are for sale right now, for over $1 million, that increased by 37.5%. And also for these price segments for over 200,000, all increasing by more than 30% from 12 months ago. Now, before I discuss the share of price reductions in Florida, which again is at least a 5-year high during this time frame, I want to share this with you guys as well because we're seeing still a lack of distressed home sales. In fact, out of all the sales this March, 0.7% came from a distressed home sale, either a foreclosure or a short sale. So for example, there was 23,249 traditional sales, which means not a distressed home sale, whereas we had 159 closed sales that were foreclosures or a real estate owned property. Also, we only had 27 short sales out of the 23,249 traditional sales. So again, we have less than 1% of all sales this March were distressed home sales. Also, looking back at March of 2020, look at these numbers. So 159 foreclosures and REOs for March of 2024. However, look at this, March 2020, 560 foreclosures. On top of that, 113 short sales compared to only 27 this March. All right, so before I wrap this video up, I want to share this with you guys as well. This is according to altosresearch.com for the share of price reductions in Florida. So for the week ended April 12th, the share price drops just under 45%. Last year this time, we're at 38%. 2 years ago, we were at only 19.58%. And in 2021, 17.5%. 2020 at 32%. And at the end of April 2019, the share price drops at 38.5%. So at 45% right now, this means that more than 4 of every 10 houses for sale in Florida have already reduced their asking price. So what's your biggest takeaway from today's video? If you guys got any value out of this video whatsoever, then please hit the like button. Also consider subscribing as well, because of course I post frequent housing market updates so you guys can be more informed. I appreciate you guys watching today's video. We'll see you on the next video.